Even before the Republican tax bill passed the House and the Senate and was signed by the President last month, Speaker Paul Ryan started talking about all this new debt and how we were going to have to cut programs because of all this new debt created by the tax bill. He talked about cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other domestic programs. Now, I think there's a better alternative to what Speaker Ryan and others are proposing. Let's revisit the tax bill a little bit. It cost about $1.5 trillion to reduce the corporate rate by 40%. Now, what could we do with $1.5 trillion? Well, there's a big burden on all our local school districts, which is called IDEA. It's mandated special education public schools. It's a great idea, but the federal government has never held up its end of the bargain to fund that. So we could fully fund that. Oh, and we would have enough money left over to provide every high school senior with up to $25,000 in tuition assistance to go to a technical school, community college, four-year university, whatever they choose. Anything that's going to enhance their education, their earning power. Not bad. Now, then we could say, well, we also, part of this bill was supposed to bring jobs home to America. Actually, there's a special new tax provision which is going to encourage corporations to move overseas to get a 10% tax rate. That's going to cost $207 billion. We're going to borrow $207 billion, new debt, deficit, to encourage corporations to move jobs overseas. Well, how about we undo that and instead invest $207 billion in infrastructure? That could create 3 million jobs here in America over a decade. Now, these aren't just construction jobs. These are design, they're engineering, actually high tech when you start talking about transit vehicles. They're small business, they're manufacturing, they go across the spectrum because we have very, very strong Buy America provisions, the strongest in the entire government for investments in transportation. I think that would be a better use of $207 billion than encouraging corporations to move jobs overseas. Then there was the last minute, written in the margin, tax break on the Senate side to reduce the taxes on those poor suffering souls who earn over $500,000 a year. Now, that little minor addition costs $130 billion. Now, what could we do with $130 billion? We could actually have a real COLA for seniors that actually reflects the cost of living increases, particularly for medical care, prescription drugs, and other things. And we'd have $40 billion left over to help lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors or all Americans. Probably a better way to spend $130 billion than tax cuts for people who earn over $500,000 who are just going to trickle on us anyway. And then finally, the poor suffering heirs of estates worth more than $11 billion or $22 billion, 11 billion individual, 22 family, they need to, they just can't afford to pay any inheritance taxes. So that costs $72 billion. We're borrowing $72 billion to give a special new tax break to estates worth $22 million or more. Now, of course, that might benefit the president, but he says he doesn't get any benefits out of this bill. So maybe he's not worth $22 million. I don't know. So anyway, $72 billion would fully cover the cost of the Children's Health Insurance Program, something the Republicans are saying we just can't afford anymore. It covers 9 million kids in the United States, hundreds of thousands in Oregon. We can't afford it? Oh, great. Well, actually, we could. And we could also fund community health centers over the next decade. We have many of those in Southwest Oregon, across the country, that are providing primary care and access to other services for a large number of people, particularly those on Medicaid, but also for people who don't have other insurance. So I think there's really a better way to go. So instead of saying, gee, now we have to turn to cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other programs that are essential to Americans, we could actually just do away with some of their tax cuts here and provide things that provide real jobs and real benefits to Americans. I think it's a better way.